Thank you.
All right, so maayong hapon, magandang hapon, good afternoon to everyone. So we welcome you to this emergency meeting of our Patriots. We wish to acknowledge those who are in the room with us today. And we are joined po by Super Sally, by Miss Penny Reyes and Dr. Aisha Villanueva. Ako po si Attorney Tanya Lat, and on behalf of the Lunas Pilipinas Coalition, thank you po for joining us this afternoon. Alam po namin na we're all very busy. You could be elsewhere on this Saturday afternoon. And we thank you for joining us, and thank you for being patient with the technical difficulties this afternoon. We believe that you're here because you were called to respond to the call. And we decided to call for this emergency broadcast in light of some very important developments these past few days, relating to what's happening here in the country, and also what's happening in the world. So by way of context po, para sa mga guro, alam po ninyo na nagsimula na po ulit ang klase, balik eskwela, and we also know that there are announcements po about restarting vaccination. Many teachers from DepEd have informed us that in their respective schools, the DepEd and DOH are encouraging the children and the parents to have the children vaccinated again. And we might think that only the COVID vaccines were cause for alarm. We have local findings na po to show that there is reason to believe that we have to also be concerned about the children's vaccines, and also all other vaccines that are being offered on the market. Super Sally will also provide the context, because in terms of statistics, we know that Super Sally has been monitoring excess deaths since the pandemic, that there are also very worrying findings in relation to infant and child mortality. So ito po yung magiging context nito. So for this afternoon, ito po yung magiging sequence natin. So first of all, Super Sally will be presenting the findings regarding births and deaths, and also trends involving child and infant mortality. And then after this, Dr. Aisha Villanueva and Ms. Penny Reyes will be reporting their findings in relation to dark field microscopy and EMF readings of the different vaccines that are being offered here in the Philippines. We will offer an opportunity for those of you joining us here on Zoom to ask your questions bilang mga guro, bilang mga parents. And then we'll also be relating this later on to developments in the what's happening in the world. We're probably following the news, and there are very worrying developments in relation to what's happening in the Middle East, and also the involvement now of the United States, and what that would mean in terms of escalation, and how the rest of the world, including Asia and the Philippines, would be affected by what's going on. So yun. So our chat box is open, so everyone is available to chat. So you're welcome to please type in your questions or comments as our discussion is going on. We welcome po, it's okay to talk in the classroom for as long as you chat. And we welcome po the interaction of everyone here. So yun. So with that, I now turn the floor over to Super Sally to begin her presentation.
Okay, I'm just going to share my presentation. This is a similar presentation to what I presented during the press release a few weeks ago. Can everybody see my slides? Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to be presenting today is population outcomes in the Philippines over the pandemic years, and I'm particularly focusing on pediatric and infant deaths, because that is what we can see from the vital statistics data. So just to remind everybody, All of this started back in March of 2020, 5 years ago, more than 5 years now, when the government declared a state of public health emergency, and then just a week later we were locked down. And that lockdown extended for more than 2 years up until the end of 2022. And all COVID restrictions were finally lifted, or supposed to have been lifted by the middle of July 2023. We know that they weren't completely lifted because we still see some places looking for, and we still see many people wearing masks and very concerned about the health situation. Okay, so this is the information about, just to remind you, what happened with the vaccines, COVID vaccines in the Philippines. The rollout started in March 2021. Pregnant women were vaccinated from August. Children aged 12 to 17 were vaccinated from the 15th of October, and booster dosing started in November. Children aged 5 to 11 started dosing from February 2022. And we also had a bivalent Pfizer as a third booster in June 2023. But by the end of 2023, all of the vaccines had expired and the Department of Health vaccination program ended. So the Philippines hasn't had any available COVID vaccines here officially. There may have been certain private groups that brought them in, but there's none available, and it's not a requirement for travel or for any other current official requirements. So in the Philippines, we had around 7 vaccines in common use. The government very strongly recommended that people take whatever was available. So we had both homologous, meaning you take the same brand, and we had heterologous, meaning you take whatever is available. And that makes health outcomes very difficult to track, because if people have taken multiple doses of different products, we don't know where their symptoms come from. So about 72% of the Philippine population was injected with COVID vaccines. That's about 78 million people. About 22% of our population, around 28 million, took one or more boosters, and we have about 10% that were used were Pfizer, CoronaVac, and Moderna were the most common injections used. Okay, so the target population were injected. For children aged 12 and above and working age adults, the government achieved more than their 80% target. So nearly all adults and 12 to 17-year-old were injected. This is very relevant because this is our population that is responsible for childbearing and also working. And our young children, only about half of them were injected. So this is the status of COVID vaccination in the Philippines. And we should not forget this as we move forward, because it's got implications for population health outcome. Okay, so why do I look at vital statistics? Vital statistics are births and deaths. And these are very concrete data. Usually, under normal circumstances, it should change only very slowly over time. It gives us an excellent idea of our population's health and well-being, and any sudden changes should be alarming and should be looked into, because it means that something has gone wrong. So this is an example of what the data that I access look like. This is public domain data. Anybody can access this data. You just go to the Philippine Statistics website, you look for vital statistics, and you can download everything. So there's nothing secret or confidential about the information that I'm sharing. So these are our Philippines annual registered deaths since 2000. Sorry. So we could see that from 2000 up to 2019, our deaths rose slowly over time. This is completely normal because we have a growing population and our population is slowly aging. What is surprising is the first yellow bar. That's the first year of COVID. We had lower than usual deaths in 2020. And this is despite the government and announcing deaths every day. But in 2021, when the vaccines rolled out, suddenly we had 43% excess deaths, computing or reporting death data early for 2021. 2022 and 23, our deaths went down, but they were still higher than they had been pre-pandemic. So this tells us that something affected the health of our population, and that event happened in 2021. So these are our annual registered births in the Philippines. 2012 was the Philippines' peak birth year. We had nearly 1.8 million babies born in that year. However, since 2012, our births have been dropping every year. So 2020, that's the yellow bar, first year of the pandemic, we suddenly had a very big drop in births. I believe that the drop in births in 2020 was at least partially due to under-registration. I think the actual births may be higher than reported. However, 2021, we had a very large drop in births. It's by another 10%. And I think this is no longer so much under registration. I think this represents a real drop in births. We had some recovery in births in 2022 and 23, but our births are still well below what they had been prior to the pandemic. I don't have 2024 data complete yet, but 2024 looks much worse in terms of births than 2023. I think we're going to have another 10 to 15% drop in births in the final data. So this is a picture of births and deaths over time. Births is the blue line on the top, and this is since 2019. And the bottom line in orange is our deaths. I've marked the start of vaccination with a beautiful syringe, so we will not forget. And what we can see is that our births have been declining over time. 2024, the data at the moment is supposedly compiled up to November of 2024, but we have completely lost our normal pattern of births in 2024. And I don't believe that this can recover to prior levels, even with late registration. So I will be updating this as soon as it's available. I don't see anybody paying attention to this. If we're looking at education-related aspects, I have seen local news reports that enrollment for students are below what is expected. And if we consider that our births dropped in 2020 and 21, those children should now be entering school. And if we have lost 10% of babies each year, that would mean 10% fewer babies available for enrollment in school in each subsequent year. So this has big implications for the education system. It also has big implications for our future workforce in the Philippines. And this is not yet saying anything regarding the health of our children. This is just saying who was born and who is surviving. So pediatric deaths. In the Philippines, quite catastrophically, we have somewhere between 40 and 50,000 children aged 0 to 19 die every single year. 2020, the pediatric deaths dropped by about 20%. This is quite unusual, according to Department of Health, because in 2020, children didn't have access to healthcare. And the government had expected that people should die when they couldn't access healthcare, but that wasn't the case. 2021, 22, and 23, we see every year has a rising pediatric mortality. Now, this is even more of a concern than you would think just looking at the numbers, because remember, our population of children is getting smaller. So if the numbers are rising, they are further exacerbated when you consider we have fewer children. I couldn't do a mortality rate for children because I don't know the numbers of children in each age group. But I'm able to do mortality rates for infants. And now I'm going to focus on infant deaths. So Philippine Statistics Authority gives us annual reports that I could access pediatric deaths. When I looked at the pediatric data, I adjusted it to death rates, meaning I adjusted it per 1,000 or per 1 million live births so that I could compare the rates between years, even if the numbers of children change. I have data from 2018, 2020 to 23. So I have 5 years of data. And I also have cause of death data. And I was able to have that data was broken down. The first week of life, then the first few weeks of life, and then the months in the first year of life. So I'm looking at what happens to infants across time. So these are our infant deaths. These are still the raw numbers. And what we could see is that from 2000, our infant deaths are dropping, which is a good thing. It means that the Department of Health is probably doing a good job with improving breastfeeding, maternal care, maternal nutrition, etc. 2020, the first year of the pandemic, in yellow again, a big drop in infant deaths, and then we see it rises again. But remember, infant births are going down. So this now is adjusted for infant mortality. This is deaths per 1,000 live births. And this shows us very clearly from 2000, deaths were declining. They were relatively stable from around 2008 up to around 2016. They rose in 2019, dropped dramatically in 2020. So during the pandemic, our babies didn't die. So instead of having 13 babies die for every 1,000 births, we only had 11 babies die. But after the pandemic in 2021 and thereafter, we have greatly increased infant deaths. And in 2023, we were having 15 babies were dying for every 1,000 births. So this is quite catastrophic. That means 3 babies die for every 200 babies that are born. Okay, so the questions we asked, why did infant deaths drop so much in 2020, the first year of the pandemic? And why did they rise in 2020 under identical lockdown conditions, with the only change being the introduction of the COVID-19 vaccines? And then we asked, why is infant mortality rising every year, despite our Department of Health having multiple programs to address infant and maternal health? So these are infant deaths by period. So this is across the first year of life. And what you can see is the under 1 day of deaths, around 2,000 babies die on their first day of life. And then we see across 1 day, 2 days, up to 7 days, you can see that the deaths drop over time. But you can see that deaths continue to the end of the first year of life. But what is concerning about this is that when you look at the pattern, this is from 2020 to 2023, we see that the deaths are increasing every year, meaning our babies are getting sicker and more babies are dying. So I broke down, this is the first week of life because the plot I just showed you was quite small. So again, you can see that infant mortality rises for every day as they over the years, from 2000 to 2023, our infant deaths are increasing. Something is making our babies sicker. Okay, now this is in the next 3 weeks of life. Again, we can see from 2000 to 2023, 2020 to 23, you can see our infant mortality is rising over time. And then this is for the next 11 months of life. We can see again, infant mortality day 28 to 1 month. That's the end of the first month of life, meaning the child is 2 months. So this is actually the period when babies first receive their major vaccines, aside from their birth vaccines. And we can see a very big rise in infant mortality across the entire plot. So what I wanted to look at, this is a bit confusing, but what this shows is a comparison between infant mortality 2018, which is pre-pandemic, to 2023. So the dotted line is showing us the increase in deaths across the first year of the infant's life. And we see that across all periods in the first year of life, more babies are dying in the Philippines. So in 2020 is the orange bar. We see that there were far fewer deaths in 2020. So now I'm going to look at causes of death. So what killed our babies? So one of the biggest causes of infant deaths is perinatal conditions. These are conditions that occur around the time of birth. We also see a big increase in congenital and chromosomal conditions. This is between 2018 and 2023. So you could see the blue and the orange bar. This is 2018, 2020. Congenital and chromosomal conditions were fairly stable. 2021 onwards, they're rising every year. Infant respiratory conditions rising every year. Infection also rising every year, meaning our babies are dying from these conditions more often than they were prior to the pandemic. Okay, so this is newborn bacterial sepsis. It's increased. Deaths have increased. Newborn respiratory distress, we have a nearly 60% increase between 2018 and 2023. Quite catastrophic. Nervous system diseases, this would mean neurological. I would think this would mean epilepsy, seizures, these sort of conditions, nervous system diseases. Sepsis, this means uncontrolled infection that causes organ failure. Then we have SIDS, this is sudden infant death syndrome. It was fairly stable, 2018 and 2020, almost the same, but it's been rising since 2021. External causes are things like accidents, but again, this is rather strange. It also includes accidental suffocation. And I brought this one up. It's a fairly minor cause of death, but this is a condition where a parent may be blamed for their child suffocating. And this is quite catastrophic. Why would more children suddenly be suffocated or thought to have been suffocated and their parents blamed? I would also remind people that this condition could also actually be SIDS, or it could be a respiratory condition, rather than the parent directly doing anything to cause it. Okay, so just so everybody knows, most babies in the Philippines are born in hospitals and with the assistance of birth attendants. So more than 99% of babies in the Philippines are attended by medical staff of some sort. So if that is the case, we have to question why are so many babies dying. It's not as if the babies are not getting medical care at birth. They are. Okay, so now I'm going to look at by period and cause of death. So I want to show you what happens over time with our babies. So these are deaths from congenital malformations. This means the baby has not formed properly. And in this condition, we see the most babies who die of this die in their first 2 days of life. And that is what we would expect if a baby is born with a condition that's not compatible with life. But what is very concerning is that this condition has risen so much from 2000 to 2023, meaning something is stopping our babies developing normally. Okay, so this is conditions originating in the perinatal period. These are things that happen or occur to babies in the first month of life. And they include respiratory conditions, they include SIDS, they include birth complications. Again, we see this as highest on the first day of life and drops down. But again, we see that this is increasing over time from 2000 to 2023, meaning it's getting worse. Okay, so now these are infant deaths from respiratory distress of newborns. This means that the babies can't breathe properly. This peaks on the first day of life and up to the third day of life, and we see it's increasing over time. So something is affecting our baby's ability to breathe. I think Dr. Aisha may have something in her presentation that might explain some of this. This is bacterial sepsis of newborn. This means that the baby has overwhelming infection that kills it. And this is quite curious, given that most babies are born in hospital settings and with medical assistance, meaning we will assume that they have good hygiene and good practices surrounding the birth, meaning the baby shouldn't be dying of overwhelming infection or sepsis. And this condition peaks on the third day of life. And it's generally increasing over time, but not in all periods. We can see that In some of these, it was higher in 2021 and 22. But day 6 and day 7, it's already a highest in 2023. So getting worse over time. SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, peaks on day 2 and 3 of life. Suddenly babies are dying for no known reason. And there's also a peak in SIDS around 1 to 2 months. Okay, this is infectious and parasitic diseases. So our babies seem to be doing quite well in their first month of life. In their second month of life, they suddenly start dying of infection and parasitic diseases. So something has affected the baby's immune system to make them more susceptible to illness. Okay, diseases of the respiratory system, these also spike from 1 to 2 months of age. And this is nervous system diseases. Again, these start specifically, very few prior in the first month of life. In the second month of life, we suddenly see a big spike. We see another big spike at 6 and 9 months of age for infants with nervous system diseases. Again, I will assume that these are mostly epilepsy, seizures, could be strokes. Okay, so sepsis, this is not sepsis of newborn, this is general sepsis. Okay, so again, this spikes at 1 month when after the first month of life. Accidental threats to breathing, this spikes, so it says babies are somehow suffocated in the second month of life, which is quite unusual because by 2 months of age, a baby should be getting quite mobile. So you would expect them to be less likely to suffocate than if they were younger. Okay, so my question is, are there external factors affecting infant mortality? We saw that deaths in infants dropped in 2020, but have been rising up to 2023. And we see that the infant mortality is rising despite more than 99% of births occurring in health facilities or attended by health professionals, midwife, or traditional birth assistants. Congenital conditions peak on day 0, but they have risen to their highest recorded levels in 2023, meaning something is causing congenital malformations of our babies. We also asked, why do deaths peak at 2 to 3 days post-delivery for certain conditions, including sepsis, respiratory distress, and SIDS? Is there something happening around the time of birth that may affect the health of infants to cause them to die within the next few days? And then we also asked, why is there suddenly a big change in causes of death, starting from 28 days and into the second month of life with key conditions? Is something happening at the end of the first month in life that may be affecting health outcomes of our babies? So this is just for information. You may draw your own conclusions, but this is the summary of core infant vaccines given in the Philippines. Diphtheria tetanus is given during pregnancy to mothers. The vaccine used in the Philippines contains thimerosal and aluminium. BCG and hepatitis B are both given at birth, as soon after birth as possible, often within minutes. The hepatitis B vaccine contains aluminium and thimerosal as well. And it's given at birth, 4 weeks and 6 months. The next major dosing of vaccines includes polio and pentavalent, which starts at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and 14 weeks. MMR is given early in the Philippines at 9 months and then 12 months, and PCV is given at 6 months. So what we at 6 weeks, sorry, and then 10 weeks. So what we could see is that infants are given vaccines immediately upon birth, and then they start their vaccine schedule at 6 weeks of age. And that's a very heavy dosing from 6 weeks of age. And this 6 week captures the 28 to 1 month period, end of the first month of life or second. So we need to question whether vaccines would be related or could be contributing to these deaths that we see in infants. Sorry. So what I have plotted here, this is monthly infant deaths from 2020 to 2023. And I marked the lockdown, and I marked start of COVID vaccines and vaccines to older children. And I've also marked when the Department of Health had their catch-up vaccines scheduled. They had every year they're having, from April to June, they're having vaccination catch-up drives. So 2022, it was chicken vacuna, catch up, and then in 2023 they had ticketing link cards, and they're having another drive. They had another drive in 2024 and also this year, as the government is doing their best to catch children up on the vaccines. Please notice the pattern of deaths in infants. These are deaths per 1,000 births. Somehow we see that deaths go up over time, somehow correlated. We cannot say there's a causal link, but there does seem to be a correlation here. And it would be wise if this could be investigated. And I think they're doing this in the US under Robert Kennedy, when they're trying to look at the causes of autism and failing health of children. And this may have some spillover in the Philippines. So I'm just going to say these data might raise an alarm signal that requires further investigation. Is infant mortality data a smoking gun? Thank you. I've gone through that very quickly. I welcome questions, but I hope this will challenge people to think about what we're seeing and what we're doing to our children and ourselves.
So thank you very much, Super Sally. So just a question in relation to the question that you posed in your last slide, whether this is a smoking gun. Do you have findings relating to 2024, or is that not available yet?
No, it's not yet available. 2024 data will be available early next year. Should be end of this year or early next year. So I don't have any breakdown. I have monthly deaths, but I don't have any breakdown so far. And I'm still, every month I'm looking for new data. They do new releases, but it's not yet complete. But 2024 births look far worse. 2024 deaths look similar to 2023 deaths so far.
All right.
I think that the Philippines might have lost around 30% of our births since 2019. By 2024, I think our births will drop by 30% in most places,
All
which
right.
is quite catastrophic for schools. It means in 4 or 5 years from now, teachers could expect their classrooms to be 1/3 the size, or 2/3 the size that they are now.
I see. Yes, Carlo, you have your hand up. Sige, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, Attorney, Miss Annie, so what will happen now? What will happen now? What is happening is that the data between 2024 and 2025 are not yet released. But what can you see in this trend in 2025 on the deaths?
Okay, I'm looking at countries throughout Asia. So I'm looking at Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, Macau, Hong Kong. And what I'm seeing is that the deaths are relatively stable. They're higher than they were pre-pandemic. But I don't see them soaring. In certain places like Taiwan, every time they have a new vaccination program for adults, the deaths go up. So they're still pushing COVID vaccine. But what I'm seeing for infant births is in every single country is plummeting births. So I think that the births are going to get worse. I think 2024 is going to be bad and 2025 will be worse.
So in the Philippines also, you're
Yes.
seeing that way also in the data.
No, I only have 2024 partial data, but the partial data in the Philippines is already devastating in terms of births. But when I look at the regional areas, I can see that the births are continuing to decline in every country that I'm looking at. 2025 is their worst birth year ever in every single country. So I think it's going to get worse.
Wow.
And that's why I'm trying to raise the alarm. I'm trying to raise the alarm because one is people need to understand. Number two, people who want to have children should not put it off. because we know that these vaccines have progressive damage and that gets worse over time. So we know that ovarian reserve is decreased over time. So if someone wants to have a baby and they're still ovulating, they should try immediately. They should not wait, because the longer they wait, the less their chance of having a baby. I can't say healthy. I don't know enough about that yet. But yeah, there's big
Wow.
concerns with population collapse, not because of excess deaths, but because of plummeting births at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Sally, for the info. And I hope we can have more discussions in the future ahead of time.
I wish we didn't have to have these discussions, but they are critically important.
Yep.
Yes, thank you for
Thank
that
you
question,
again.
Carlo. Thank you. So, are there any other questions from our participants? Okay, so just going back to you, Sally. So just to summarize, what you're seeing is an increase in deaths of children, and it is clustered around the first 6 weeks of life. Is that right?
No, what we see is that infant mortality is highest at birth and then drops off. But we see that there's peaks in infant mortality at certain times that do not look natural. It would appear, we would expect under normal conditions that if a baby is born sick, it will die. Okay, that happens. But if a baby is born healthy, they're less likely to die the older they get.
Okay.
So, a 2-month-old baby should be less likely to die than a newborn baby because it's bigger and stronger. So why are we seeing peaks in deaths at certain times? This is highly, it's indicative of external factors, not internal factors, meaning something is causing these children to die. And the fact that infant deaths dropped so low during 2020, when children couldn't access medical care, fewer children died. So less medical care means healthier children, it appears. Just if you look at a correlation. And this was found globally. This is not unique to the Philippines. Right across the world, under lockdown conditions, fewer children died.
So, Sally, just to set up for Penny and Doc Aisha, would you mind putting up on the screen that particular slide which shows the unnatural peaks in deaths after the first month of life? Okay, so we're
Yes.
setting up po for the benefit of our viewers who have not seen this presentation yet. We are setting up the context for what Doc Aisha and Miss Penny will reveal in their presentation para makita po natin yung correlation.
Let me find. Okay, I have different slides showing different things. So this is bacterial sepsis. We can see that it peaks on the 3rd day of life.
Okay.
This would mean that something has happened around time of birth to cause infants to die. So this is sudden infant death syndrome. Suddenly babies are dying on day 2 and 3 of life. And there's also a peak around 1 to 2 months. Infectious and parasitic diseases. Infants suddenly start dying from infectious diseases between 1 and 2 months of life. This means that something has affected their immune system to make them more vulnerable to death. I could also look at
Here, Super Sally, di ba? Here, going back to that previous slide,
which one?
the one that you just showed, yung infectious and parasitic.
Infectious and parasitic diseases. Sepsis. Hold on, this one. Yeah.
This one, yeah. So we're seeing peaks on the 1st to 2nd month,
Yes.
and then 4 months, 6 months.
Yeah, 4 months, 6 months, and 9 months.
Okay. Offhand, is there anything that happens during those particular months that you can?
Well, 6 weeks of age is when the vaccine schedule starts.
6 weeks.
6, yeah. So here you have doses of polio, pentavalent. They all start at 6 weeks of age.
Okay.
So, and the second dose of Hep B is also given if it's part of the DTaP, is part of the pentavalent. So infants are given BCG at birth, that's for tuberculosis and hepatitis B at birth. So they're given 2 doses within minutes to hours of birth. And then at 6 weeks, they start the full vaccine schedule and they get multiple doses. And then what happens at 9 months is MMR. MMR comes in. Measles, mumps, rubella.
All right. So going back, sige, can we just flash the previous slide showing the peaks?
Oh, sorry, this, no, sorry.
The one that shows the spikes. The spikes.
This one.
Yeah.
This is respiratory diseases. Respiratory diseases. This is sepsis. This is infectious and parasitic diseases.
All right. Okay. So what we're trying to show, no, and this is going to now be the prelude sa presentation ni Doc Aisha and Miss Penny, is that so based on what you said, Super Sally, if children are not healthy, if infants are born not healthy, so they will naturally die within the first few weeks of life, but we don't expect to see peaks in death afterwards. So parang there's supposed to be a slope going down. And so the pattern that we're seeing na may peaks at 1 month, 4 months, 6 months, and 9 months is unusual.
And the fact that it's increasing over time. We're seeing infant mortality is rising. This is all standardized data. It's per million births. So if everything stayed the same, these should be more or less flat. We shouldn't see this change over time.
All right. Okay, so the question that Super Sally left us with is this a smoking gun? Okay, so we're seeing the statistics. Ito po yung nakikita natin from the data. What might be causing the spikes in death at those particular times? So within the first week of life, first to second month, fourth month, sixth month, and ninth month. And Super Sally pointed out na these happen to be the times na roll out yung different vaccines. So Hep B, MMR, etc. So now we'd like to turn over the presentation to Doc Aisha and Miss Penny. So Doc Aisha and Miss Penny are with Kalipay Wellness Center, and they have been doing their own research looking into the effects of the vaccines which are being administered locally. Okay, so ang mga ipe-present po nila are their own findings. So there are people who are also doing research abroad. They have tried to do their own findings using similar methods, and they are now going to present to you what they have been finding locally. Okay, so hindi lang po natin kinokopya o ginagaya yung sa ibang bansa. Ito po, this is our own Philippine-generated research. So kailangan po naming ilabas ang information na ito because this is happening in the Philippines. So happening in the Visayas, and most likely it's also happening in other parts of the country. If only there were other people doing similar research using dark field microscopy and EMF monitoring. So with that, we'd like to invite Doc Aisha and Ms. Penny to present the results po to our teachers who are present.
Thank you, Tanya. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Doc Aisha. I'm based in Negros Oriental.
And I'm Penny Reyes, also from Negros Oriental.
And today we'll be sharing with you what we found while investigating vaccines which are used here in the Philippines. These are part of the vaccine schedule. So let us begin. And feel free to ask any questions along the way. I was wondering if it would be okay for Penny and I to speak in Bisaya and Tagalog. If would you prefer that?
I think okay lang for the benefit of our teachers. I think many of them are from Lunas Pilipinas Bohol. So they will welcome the interaction in Bisaya, I think.
Okay. Sige. So this is our disclaimer. So we did this research with no remuneration of any kind. We did this privately, and we are not claiming to be experts. We are just merely presenting our findings. So, unsa man akong nakit-an, no? Unsa man akong gi-test. So, akong gi-test ang BCG vaccine, para sa kiingon ni Sally ganina na ginahatag ni sa pag unang gawa sa bata. Ang inactivated polio, part po ni sa vaccine schedule, ang DPT, na vaccine, diphtheria and tetanus para sa mga adults o adolescents, o ang tetanus toxoid, ang 5-in-1, yung DPT, Hep B o Haemophilus influenza, ang pneumococcal, ako pong gi-check, part po ni sa vaccine schedule sa mga bata o mga tigulang, the oral polio, na ginahatag pod sa mga bata ug ang Hep B. So kani ang mga samples akong gikuha ni sa mga sa diri sa hospital ug sa City Health Office. Kani mo'y mga bakuna na ginahatag sa DOH ug silang tanan except sa tetanus toxoid kay dili na ko makit-an ang data, but sila tanan kay meets the WHO requirement para diri sa pagbakuna. So kani ang actual na mga samples na gitest nako. Ang uban ani kay ginamit, so naay nabilin akong gikuha ang sobra og akong gitan-aw. Ang uban kay sealed. Pero tanan is gikan sa Pilipinas. So kaning mga equipment na akong gigamit is isa ni ka microscope na pwede nimo makit-an ang bagay na up to 1,600 times na magnification. So kita nimo ang picture dira, makita jud nimo ang mga red blood cells. And unsa pay mas gamay, dili mi makakita og nano na kagamay, pero kung micrometers ang size, makita nimo siya. Then ang maayo ani kay instead of na white ang background, ang dark na background mutabang para makita nato unsay in between sa fluid. So usually ginagamit niya siya sa pagtan-aw sa blood sa procedure na tawag nato na live blood analysis. So kato gamit.
Ito naman ang aking ginamit para malaman kung mayroon bang interaction ang electromagnetic frequency sa inobserbahan namin sa under the microscope. Ito ang tawag na tri-field EMF meter at sobrang sensitibo nito. Maganda ang range niya ng detection. Mula 20 megahertz hanggang 66 gigahertz. Kaya ang sabi nila, pag maganda yung healthy yung environment sa isang lugar, dapat mababa yan sa 1 milliwatt per square meter at peak. At saka yung field measurement dapat mababa sa 0.2 milliwatt per square meter. Kaya meron tayong batayan para malaman kung yung lugar ay healthy para sa tao o hindi. Base doon sa measurements na makukuha dito sa instrumento na ito, no? Okay. So ang ginawa namin, naghanap kami ng lugar kung saan walang malaking impluensya ng Wi-Fi. Meron tayo niyan sa Kalipay. At nakahanap kami ng paraan para masara ang router para malaman namin ano ba ang meter reading kapag sarado ang router namin. At kapag bukas ang router ng EMF, ano nga ba ang reading? So sa kaliwa, sarado ang router. Sa kanan, bukas. Malaking diferensya. Kasi sa ibang lugar ng testing, hindi namin masara ang router at saka ang mga kapitbahay, maraming may wifi para na talagang halo-halo doon ng wifi. Hindi mo ma-isolate. Pero nung naggawa kami ng testing, nakuha namin talaga yung magandang, malinis na lugar. Ano yung epekto nito? Malalaman natin kasi yung inoobserbahan natin, mayroong diferensya sa response. Okay. So ito yung ginawa namin na habang nag-oobserba kami under the microscope. Yan po ang reading. Walang wifi. Bakit ganun? Walang wifi, may nakuha. Base dun sa inoobserbahan namin. Ibig sabihin, may pinanggagalingan yung signal kahit nakapatay yung wifi. Yun eh. So, nagre-respond yata itong mga inoobserbahan namin meron sariling pinanggagalingan na EMF. Okay.
Ms. Penny, siguro just to for the benefit of our viewers, can you give a brief explanation of EMF and why it's significant for us to understand the implications?
Sige. Itong EMF ay ang shortcut para sa electromagnetic frequency. Tayo pong lahat mga tao ay mayroon yan sa katawan. Natural yan na likas na meron tayong natural na electromagnetic frequency dahil may kuryente tayo sa katawan. Pero ang pinag-uusapan natin dito ay yung hindi natural na EMF. Ito po ay nanggagaling sa mga cellphone tower, sa mga electronic device, at ito po ay malaki ang kuryenteng dinadala. Malaki ang interactions at epekto sa katawan. Kaya nakakabahala ito dahil kung mayroon tayong na detect o na pick up sa instrumento, kahit na nakapatay na ang lahat ng mga device, saan po nanggagaling yun? Yan ang magandang tanong. Okay. So, yun po. Sana na malinaw ng konti ang ibig sabihin ng EMF.
Thank you, Ms. Penny.
Welcome. So, ito po yung nag-measure po kami na walang wifi. Ang baba, kumpara mo dun sa lugar na merong wifi. Kung titingnan mo, dapat wala yan eh. Ito po yung maraming cellphone tower na kapalibot, 11 ang tower sa 1 kilometro. Nagbilang kami ng cellphone tower at yan po ang na-detect ang lakas ng signal na napipick up. Yan po. Habang ginagawa namin yung test. Okay po. Tapos na. Next. Yan yung tunog ng machine. Umiingay siya kapag lumalakas yung pulse ng signal. Okay. Nakatutok yan lahat sa mga vial. Okay, thank you.
So this was our sampling method. Ang among gibuhat is gikuha namo ang bakuna, gi-sterilize namo, gikuha og 1 to 2 drops sa bakuna. Dayon gibutang sa glass slide. Gi-cover dayon siya og cover slip, then among gitan-aw dayon sa microscope. Unsa man among nakit-an no? Kabalo mo na ang unod sa bakuna na ay mga gagimok. Na ako'y nakita na gagimok dayon ako nang gibase whether gagimok siya o ginagmayra or kusog siya mo gimok, or if kusog siya mo gimok dayon mura siya kabalo siya asa siya mapadulong. Ako po siyang gibase kung mga gagmay siya or mga dagko or dagko kaayo na ay mga complex na geometric na shapes na kanang mura gi-drawing jud siya. Dayon akong gitan-aw kung naa ba siya'y suga kay ang uban na suga, ang uban walay suga. Dayon akong gitan-aw if mo ang mga particles kay mo kanang pasabot anang self-assembly mura sila magkadaghan o magdako. So ako po din siyang nakit-an while gatan-aw ko under the microscope na naay uban na kadaghan sila o gagkadagko. Dayon ako pong gibase if na sila interparticle interaction. So may na kanang interparticle interaction mura sila makita nimo na kanang mo hapit sila sa uban na particles, mura sila kabalo kung asa sila ganahan mo adto, dayon pagkita nimo pagkuyog nila murag pwede sila mo join diri or dili sila mo join diri, meaning naay interaction, dili siya random, dili ra siya murag the float ra sila, kabalo sila asa mo adto. So munay akong nakit-an. So sa tanan na bakuna na akong check, silang tanan na ay movement and activity. Makita nimo movement and activity was noted sa ilang tanan. Silang tanan na ay mga particles na kanang na ay move, dayon naapoy uban na dagko ang mga size nila. So sa ilang tanan akong nakit-an na naa sila particles naga-move og tanan except sa BCG na naay dagko na particles. Silang pugtanan kay mo interact sa light. Makita nimo na naay mga light na makita na mga blue, orange, violet, red. Sa tanan pod na bakuna na akong gitan-aw, naa sila'y kanang particles na mag-join together, mura sila mudaghan. So tanan akong nakit-an nagabuhat ana. Dayon tanan pod akong nakit-an naga-interact sa ubang other particles except sa katong Hep B, katong walay Wi-Fi. Pero unya ra nato na istoryahan. Ato sang istoryahan unsay nakit-an. Dayon sa other remarks sa magnetic activity. Oh, yes, Tanya.
Yeah, Doc Aisha, sorry to interrupt. We have a
Yes.
request from one of our listeners who's from Bicol and he just joined us. Oh, he doesn't understand Bisaya. So if it's
Okay.
possible to just alternate para at least we don't
Oh yeah, sure. English, Bisaya.
English, Bisaya, Tagalog so that everyone
Oh,
gets
sure.
to understand. Yeah.
Okay, Tagalog. Yes, I will try my best.
Sige, thank you.
So, lahat, just to recap, lahat ng nakita ko, merong movement and activity. Meron akong nakita na sa on its own, it's moving. There are particles that are seen moving and interacting with other particles. I saw this under the microscope in all of the vaccines that I tested. All of them have had small particles, and all except the BCG had large geometric shapes. All of them also interacted with light. aside from the BCG, all of the other vaccines tested was observed to have some magnetism. So what is magnetism? Pag nagpunta siya, pag nasa when it's going closer to another particle, you suddenly see them to uh come together. And the closer they get those particles, the stronger they are attracted to these other particles. But what is key to note is that it's not a random pattern where the particles floating will just go and combine and be magnetized to any random particle. Instead, they seem or appear to choose what they want to join to. Anyways, I will show this to you. I will show you ano yung nakita ko. So presentation, I find the links. So this is, we'll talk about the inactivated polio, no? This is part of the vaccine schedule. So I'm just showing you the label. Ano yung sabi sa label? Sa proseso ng paggawa ito, merong formaldehyde. Tapos, yung side effect, sinasabi nila is yung Guillain-Barré syndrome. Isa ito sa yung sinasabi ni Sally kanina na tawag nating nervous system disorder. So, this Guillain-Barré is when your nerves of yourself attack your peripheral nerves. So, your body attacks your peripheral nerves. This is a central nervous system disorder. And this is what I saw under the microscope. So this is yung polio. So i-zoom in natin para makita natin ano, this is the time speed. Pero tingnan natin ano yung nangyayari, no? Ano yung nakita ko. Zoom in natin.
So Doc Aisha, can you explain ano yung nakikita natin na to na parang bakit siya maliwanag at bakit gumagalaw? Is this usual or is this weird?
I don't think that since it's an inactivated vaccine, I wouldn't expect to see something this active. And what I would be wary about is that in all the vaccines, there is some activity where the particles are moving. I'm sorry, was that your question? Why is it?
Yeah, why is it moving? And then is it usual na it's this bright?
The light, well, I haven't seen vaccines prior to 2021. I've only been looking at these, you know, since after the COVID vaccine was sent out. But what's interesting is the light interacting element of these structures has been seen across all of the vaccines, whether they're inactivated or attenuated. I hope that answers your question.
Oo. I mean, for those of us who are not used to this kind of thing, we would, parang we don't understand, parang is this normal? The Christmas lights, the blinking, you know. So, if you could walk us through what we're seeing ba?
Okay. I first saw this live in human blood. So what I do is live blood analysis, and I heard that the vaccine was causing harm to people. So I learned how to do live blood analysis, and then I would check people's blood, and it seems the more jabs they got, the more of these blinking lights I saw in their blood.
And then you compared this with the blood of people who are not vaccinated.
Oh yes, I've compare this to the blood of people who are not vaccinated, people who don't live in the city, people who are eating organic food,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a huge difference. It seems like the more sick they are, the more they have of these things.
Oh, okay. So vaccinated people tend to be more sick, and also in terms of the blood, itong mga nakikita natin na nagbo-blink, you see more of that.
I can't generalize that vaccinated people tend to be more sick, but I do see more of these in the vaccinated.
Okay.
And usually around the parts where you see a lot of these blinking structures, the red blood cells around them, in the live blood of a human being, there's destruction in the red blood cells. So when this is near the red blood cells around that area are dying.
And I think you have footage of that. Could you
Yes.
perhaps share that? We saw that kasi we presented that po during the International Press Conference nung May. It's best seen for yourself.
Oo, pakita natin, Aisha.
Oo.
Yes. Shall I show it now?
Yeah,
Yes,
skip na. Oo, punta na tayo doon.
So, wait, I'm showing the blood with the BCG, with the Hep B.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. So ito. Can you all see?
Wala pa. It's
Can you see
black screen pa lang.
black screen?
Yeah. Ayan.
Share ko.
Okay. All right. Okay, kita na.
Okay na?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So ito, this is let me sorry. So this is yung hepatitis B vaccine under the slide, and then I added a drop of blood from a healthy individual. And then so that's the blood being mixed into the vaccine. After a minute, you see the red blood cells are circle and red. After 3 minutes, the red blood cells start to turn gray. And then after a few minutes later, there, do you see on the top right, the red blood cells start dying? That was at 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And the red blood cells dying continues. This is after 9 minutes. Padayon og mamatay ang mga red blood cells after 11 minutes. Mga tunga sa red blood cells sa viewing field dili na makita, no?
Yung parang nagdi-disappear. Nagdi-disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The
kanina,
cells start to
kanina punong-puno yung slide ng mga blood cells, and then over time, nagdi-disappear siya.
Mhm. And then what's interesting about this is that we did the same experiment, pero we did it in a place with no Wi-Fi. So the one kanina, this is with the place with Wi-Fi. And this is in comparison. So you see the one with Wi-Fi and the one with no Wi-Fi. So this is just the vaccine itself, no? And the one on the bottom, it's there's a video recording. You see some activity, but not as much as the one on top.
So can you explain the difference yung in what we're seeing? So yung dun sa no Wi-Fi and yung sa Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So when there's Wi-Fi, you see the particles are more active. Even if someone can say it's a Brownian movement, if you look closely, the particles seem to choose where they want to interact. If you see that one there, it knows where it wants to go, and then it becomes magnetized. There's also some twitching. It starts twitching. Whereas when there was no Wi-Fi, you can barely see any movement. So I'm playing the video again. If you look on the bottom, there's some movements. it's still twitching, but the particles aren't as active. So it made us think, why does having Wi-Fi, why being in a place that there's Wi-Fi, why does it influence the activity of the vaccines? Why when there's Wi-Fi, the vaccines are moving more?
So, pwede mag-contribute, no, ng synthesis na rin, pwede.
Yes, of course.
There's two things here. Yung pagkamatay ng red blood cells o kaya yung pagka-damage at pagkamatay whenever there's a vaccine that's introduced. A second one is yung difference ng Wi-Fi at saka no Wi-Fi setting. Kasi kung titingnan natin kung sa practical na pag-iisip, ang mga bata, nire-require yan, kung ine-encourage magbakuna bago pumasok sa eskwela, di ba? O kaya, parte ng pagpasok sa eskwela, yung pabakunahan natin para hindi magkasakit ang mga bata at hindi maghawaan. Ngayon, ito namang pong mga eskwela, ay marami dyan may cellphone tower na katapat. Malakas po ang signal ng mga cellphones. Pansinin natin, saan nakalagay? Malapit sa eskwelahan o palengke? Ano ngayon ang pwedeng mangyari base sa mga observations namin? Kung titignan ninyo, bakunado ang bata, parati pang may Wi-Fi na exposure. Ano ang implikasyon niyan sa kalusugan ng mga bata? Yan lang po ang isipin suriin natin ng mas malalim. Kasi maraming mga nag-iimpluwensyang mga sitwasyon, hindi lang sa pagtanggap ng bakuna, no? Kundi yung environment kung saan nandyan parati ang mga bata nakababad. Diba? So, yun lang po ang gusto kong i-highlight.
Okay, so just to summarize what's been said so far. Okay, so going back dun sa sinabi ni Super Sally na merong pumapatay dun sa mga bata, nagtutugma yung spikes during the times na ina-administer yung vaccines. And then based on yung findings ni Doc Aisha under the microscope, so meron po tayong mga nakikita na very, very small particles na parang may sariling buhay. So they're moving on their own. They seem to have a particular movement na kumbaga parang hindi natural. And they seem to be responding to Wi-Fi. Aside from that, yung mga vaccines contain dangerous substances. So na-mention ni Doc Aisha kanina, formaldehyde. I think aluminum is also present in one of the vaccines. And siguro, sige, Doc Aisha, baka you want to go back to your findings dun sa vaccines, no? The vaccines contain toxic substances in addition to these unexplainable blinking lights that seem to be moving on their own. Sige, let's go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just same thing with all the vaccines. You see movement, you see activity, you see them interacting with light, and then you have all these vaccines that, tell you that there are these side effects. And then if you bring a person to the hospital with these conditions, they're gonna say, oh, we don't know where it comes from. They never correlate it together. And yet they give you the warning that this is going to happen. And yet for these diseases, they say, oh, it's idiopathic. Idiopathic, it means we don't know what causes it.
So parang itong mga doctors natin, they ignore the side effects of the vaccines. Hindi nila iniisip itanong kung ano yung possible correlation. Parang hindi nila ma-connect yung dots pa. Ayun. Plus,
yung 5-in-1.
Sige, go ahead. Yung 5-in-1?
Yes, yung mga, all of the, yung mga side effects niya, okay, bleeding, hematoma, apnea, meaning the cessation of breathing. Tapos, ito yung itsura niya sa vaccine under the microscope.
So itong mga yellow na nakikita natin dito, Doc Aisha, these are particles that
Yes.
reflect light. Tama ba?
Yes. Yes.
Oo. So you have particles in the vaccines that are reflecting light. And then you have crystalline structures that are forming under the microscope. And then
Yeah.
they seem to be responding to Wi-Fi, as pointed out by Miss Penny.
Yes.
And
So
kapag
if
mas mataas ang exposure to Wi-Fi, mas mabilis ang movement.
yes, if you leave these if iwan mo yung bakuna, iwan mo sa slide, and balikan mo, tingnan mo, may nag-grow.
Ayun.
So, marami observations base sa Wi-Fi exposure. At mukhang hindi pa natin talaga na pag-aaralan ng malalim ang talagang total effect ng exposure sa Wi-Fi. Kaya pangalagaan natin ng konti yung ano natin, lalo na sa mga bata yung paggamit ng device.
Oo.
Ilan ba ngayon ang mga batang gumagamit at pati sa eskwela puro naka-online na, 'di ba? Hindi lang sa public schools, sa private din, private at public. So hindi ibig sabihin na kapag naka-online ka ay magaling ka na. Tingnan lang muna natin ano ba ang posibleng mga interaction nitong mga bagay na to sa katawan at sa kalusugan ng tao. Kasi cellulitis na po Ibig sabihin namamatay na po ang mga red blood cells. At pagka namatay po sila, ang dugo natin ang siyang nagdadala ng oxygen sa baga para makahinga tayo ng maayos. Kung kulang na po ang ating red blood cells sa dugo, hindi naman siguro nakapagtataka kung hindi makakahinga yung tao, yung bata na kinakapos. Kung kulang na ang dugo, patay na ang mga red cells. So, pag-aralan po natin ng malalim. Maganda po itong panimula sa pagtatanong ng balik eskwela na po, balik pasukan na, ano ba ang nire-require sa mga bata ngayon? Meron bang masasabi, may karapatan bang magsalita ang mga magulang? Ano po ang sitwasyon natin? Tatanggapin po ba natin lahat ito? Maganda pong panimula itong pag-usapan.
Oo, and that's why nagtawag ho tayo ng emergency meeting, and this was upon the initiative of the Lunas Pilipinas Bohol chapter. So thank you very much, Teacher Romeo Marino, for organizing this and for the members of CUTE Bohol who are here, as well as all the other listeners and concerned parents and teachers who joined us this afternoon. So
Yes.
before we go into the question and answer, siguro lang, Doc Isha, if you could bring back that, yung pinapanood lang natin in these past few seconds, if you could just explain, no, kasi very intriguing yung nakita natin.
Yung zebra.
Ito yung oral na polio vaccine.
Yung talking heads.
Yung
Yeah.
nag-uusap yung ano.
Yung nag-uusap sila.
Yeah, this is the oral polio vaccine. So, no adverse effects daw, pero pwede din mag-gastrointestinal infection, mag-paralysis yung person very rarely. Pero it says here that persons in close contact with a recently vaccinated child may be very rarely at risk for vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis. So it confirms that shedding is possible. So this is what I saw. this is the oral polio. I was just observing, and the movement and behavior of these particles is not that of Brownian motion, no? Alam sila ano yung saan sila magpunta.
What is Brownian motion?
It's just natural, like if you open a window and you are looking at the dust falling just around, and it's just a normal movement of air. That's what they call Brownian.
Or water, di ba parang there's a certain
Or
flow.
water.
Di ba water will
Yes.
flow downstream. Kumbaga, kung walang nagko-control or nag-influence, there's a particular movement na natural.
Mhm.
And here nakikita natin na parang ano siya may sariling movement 'di ba? Instead of going with the flow, kumbaga, they seem to be talking to each other. Ayan, sige.
My question, si Carlo.
Yes, Carlo?
Yeah, attorney, no? Dr. Ayesha, so ibig sabihin ba nito, lahat po ng mga na-observadyo sa mga nabakunahan noon pang nagsimula noong 2021 ay ganyan na nangyayari ngayon. And may I do a suggestion po, I think we should conduct more another press conference soon on this one po. Kasi malaking impormasyon po sa publiko ang nakita namin na yun And the public should know about this for the betterment of the country. Yan lang po ng question session ko dito.
Oo. Carlo, actually, yung press conference that we held nung May so that's a full press conference. Mas detalyado yung pag-explain nila Doc Ayesha and Miss Penny and Super Sally. That's available on YouTube. Okay, so if you go to the Lunas Pilipinas YouTube channel, nandun siya. It is available. Feel free to share it with your networks. Marami kang connections in media. If you could share that, kasi kompleto yon. Kompleto iyon. And then meron din tayong mga write-up tungkol doon. If you're able to connect us with your friends in media, we will be more than happy to provide the full press kit.
Yep. And also, yung sa tanong ko kanina, so posible bang maging resulta ba ito ng kamatayan itong mas malakas na connection sa Wi-Fi at yung sa bakuna mismo? At Dr. Ayesha and Miss Penny?
Ano po, malakas po talaga ang influence siguro ng Wi-Fi base sa observation namin. Kaya mag-iingat po tayo tuwing malalakas ang signal ng mga umiikot sa inyo. Kasi hindi po natin alam na kung gaano kalakas ang interaction sa loob ng katawan.
Yun. Yung sa vaccine po, ganun din po ba?
Opo, kaya nga po dahil napatunayan na po natin na may response po talaga sa Wi-Fi. Kaya hindi natin alam ang estado ng gaano karami ang toxins na dulot ng bakuna sa loob ng katawan. Hindi natin alam kung dumadami yan, gaano kadami. At kung gaano kabilis kapag maraming Wi-Fi. Kaya kung napapansin niyo yung mga video influencers na nabakunahan na napakabata pa biglang namamatay. Kayo na lang po ang mag-connect ng mga dots kung ano bang posibleng nangyari sa mga taong yan. Kung parating naka-online, mabibilis ang Wi-Fi signal, parating may hawak ng device.
Yun ang isang question.
Opo. Pero kung babalik po tayo ulit sa topic natin ngayon, lalo na po nandyan ang mga DepEd teachers o kaya yung mga guro ng ibang eskwelahan, balik pasokan na po tayo. At mukhang sinusulong talaga po ang pagpabakuna. Hindi po natin alam kung gaano kalaki ang interaction niyan, overall effect ba? Lalo na babad tayo ngayon sa lahat ng parte ng lipunan sa Wi-Fi. Kawawa naman po ang mga bata, kawawa ang mga pamilya na kung sakit na lang po ang kararatnan at pag-oospital at wag naman po sana kamatayan, pero mayroon po ba tayong paraan para ano pa ito? Mapangalagaan ang karapatan nating magdesisyon, umiwas, tumanggi. Okay. Yun po.
Okay. So Doc Aisha, Miss Penny, are there other things that you would like to present before we formally go into the open forum?
On my side, I'm okay. Magandang tukuyin na yung main topic. Kasi main point has been made.
All right. Okay, sige. So with that, we open the floor to other questions. Okay, baka meron mga ibang gustong magtanong. Okay, medyo nakailan na si Carlo. Sige, for our teachers and the parents who are present, baka you have any questions or clarifications po. So may comment po si Super Sally kanina. Okay, si Jade mentioned Vax and Wi-Fi is a deadly combination. So yan po yung lumalabas from the findings. Okay, so just to summarize everything, okay, so there's something that is causing peaks in death sa mga bata at birth, to within a week from birth, and then 1 to 2 months from birth, 4 months, 6 months, and then 10 months. And then may mga vaccines po na ina-administer at those particular times of the life cycle ng bata. Okay? And then under the microscope, nakita ni Doc Aisha na merong mga unexplainable particles na light emitting, and then para silang mga Christmas lights, nagbo-blink, they respond to light, and then they seem to have magnetic properties that are unusual. May sarili siyang galaw na kakaiba, hindi siya tulad ng yung alam natin na normal na agos ng tubig or ng hangin or ng mga dust particles. Okay. And then nakita po ni Miss Penny na kapag in-expose to Wi-Fi, itong mga vaccines, so the vaccines, pag tinuro yung kanyang meter doon, nag-i-emit po ng EMF, ng mga radio frequencies. So there's something happening. Kumbaga meron pang ini-emit ng mga frequencies itong mga vaccines by themselves. And then kapag mataas ang Wi-Fi exposure sa mga vaccines na ito, yung movement na nakikita under the microscope mas mabilis. So they seem to be forming particles, they seem to be forming structures. Yung sinasabi na self-assembling nanotechnology, na nababasa natin, nakikita natin sa mga posts abroad, mukhang ito yon. So nakikita po nila Doc Aisha and Miss Penny under the microscope yung mga naririnig natin from abroad. Okay? And then, dun sa experiment na ginawa ni Doc Aisha, nung pinatakan ng dugo yung Hep B na vaccine, nakita in real time na namamatay ang mga blood cells. Okay? So, sabi ni Super Sally in the chat box, so the blood cells die upon reaction to the vaccine. And then, sabi nga ni Miss Penny, kapag namamatay yung mga red blood cells, the red blood cells are what bring oxygen to the rest of the body. So kapag namamatay ang mga red blood cells, nare-reduce yung capacity to bring oxygen. Okay? And so if the red blood cells that carry oxygen nababawasan, baka this is why the babies are dying from respiratory failure. Hindi sila makahinga kasi on the cellular level, kulang ng oxygen. And so baka this explains yung tinatawag na SIDS, yung sudden infant death syndrome. Yung bigla namamatay yung mga bata.
Tanya, I think we should be careful to say that this is a correlation. We can't prove causation.
Mm-hmm.
This is a possible explanation, but we cannot say it needs to be looked into further.
Yes.
It could explain, but it's not necessarily the only explanation.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying, Super Sally. Okay, so maingat tayo. maingat tayo. All right? But I think those of us who are here, we already suspect naman. Alam na lang ho natin yung mga skeptics, yung mga scientists, they expect causation. Yung kailangan patunayan that there's a direct cause and effect. But ito, nakita po natin, if we connect the dots, as mentioned earlier, malaki po yung posibilidad na ito po yung dahilan na dun sa nakikita ni Super Sally na phenomenon. Okay. There may be other explanations, but this seems to be a very compelling explanation for what's happening sa mga kabataan at sa mga babies.
Yeah, there's also a recent paper that's just come out, and it's looking at SIDS, and what they have found is that the infant detox system is immature, and when they're given vaccinations, they can't detox by their liver, and then this results in sudden death. There's a brand new paper out, peer-reviewed paper. So they're explaining mechanisms of SIDS that happen shortly after, with a peak 2 to 3 days post-vaccination in infants.
So the fact that the kids' systems are not fully formed yet, diba, very vulnerable ang immune systems as well. Ayun. So si John Torres has mentioned in the chat box, so hanggang meron pang tsansa na magdesisyon o gumawa ng desisyon para sa sariling kalusugan o paghaba ng buhay o kalusugan ng mahal sa buhay at hindi ito isisi pagdating ng panahon sa gobyerno dahil sa kanila natin pinaubaya ang paggawa ng desisyon lalo na sa mga bata. Kung gagamitin natin ang imahinasyon, ay parang unti-unti na rin pinapatay ang mga bata sa kanilang red blood cells o iba pang components ng katawan. Panahon ito para seryosong makipag-usap sa gobyerno na maging transparent sa publiko sa totoong mangyayari sa mga tao kapag ipinilit ang pagbakuna. So, it's basically a call to action sa atin na those of us who already know this information should share it with people in government, should share it with other parents. We have to do what we can. Kaya nagpapasalamat kami sa mga teachers na dumating kasi malaki po yung role ninyo as teachers to educate the children, to educate the parents and your fellow teachers. Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin hindi natin alam. And we cannot say that we should not do anything kasi the absence of information and the failure to share this information could result in injury or even death. Ganun po ka-importante yung shinare po sa atin ngayong hapon. So we have to act on this information talaga. So si Sir Romeo Marino has shared in the chat box a template letter. It's in Bisaya lang, but it's essentially a rejection letter. Teacher Romy, would you be, can you share with us po yung pag-draft po ninyo ng letter and perhaps we can have inspiration po from your template. If you could unmute po. Ayan.
Thank you, Attorney Lat. Thank you for the sharing ni Dr. Aisha, tapos Ma'am Penny Reyes, at sa napakagandang sharing ni Super Sally. Yung letter po na yan, yun yung last, ginamit yan nung nagkakaroon ng mga bakuna tulad ng diniscuss ngayon ni Doktora, yung anti-polio, yung PCG at kung ano-ano pa, yan yung ginamit namin dito. At sa awa ng Diyos, merong mga parents na nag-submit din at di talaga pinilit na bakunahan yung kanilang mga anak. So for sure, kapag ngayon na meron, kasi dito sa aming district sa Ubay, nagmi-meeting na ang lahat ng districts ng mga guro. Tapos sila ang unang binakunahan nung Impax, tapos yung testing sa HIV at anti-dengue. And then for sure, ang kasunod niyan yung mga estudyante na. Kaya kailan pa tayo kikilos kung halimbawa nagsimula na ang bakunahan doon sa mga estudyante, elementary at high school, na ngayon, malinaw na malinaw ang mga discussions ng ating mga specialistang si Dr. Aisha, Ma'am Penny Reyes, at doon sa data na pinipresent ni Super Sally, na talagang merong mga nangyayaring kababalaghan merong mga nangyayaring pagkamatay at maraming nagkasakit sa ating mga kabataan. That is why yung letter na yan in Cebuano, feel free to translate in Bicolano, in kung ano yung mother tongue ninyo dyan, pwede rin sa English, para ma-submit ng parents. And of course, dagdagan natin ng mga kunting explanation yung parents para ma-encourage silang mag-submit ng mga letter na yan. Yun lang po.
Oh, thank you very much, Teacher Romy. And baka we can also, usap po tayo offline to talk about how we can organize the other DepEd teachers nationwide. Napaka-importante po na ma-mobilize po yung inyong ranks po. And thank you for this initiative for sharing the template letter with us. Si Miss Annalie may tanong po. Tanong ko lang po kung kasali ba doon ang anti-rabies at tetanus. Posible po ba may content katulad ng COVID vaccine at vaccine ng mga infant ngayon? So the nanotech that you saw, the self-assembling nanoparticles, is that possibly present in the tetanus and rabies vaccine, anti-rabies vaccines?
Yes, the tetanus vaccine, I tested it earlier. It was in one of the videos. It did have the particles. Yung rabies vaccine, hindi ko pa na-test.
Okay. So would it be possible for you to test it sometime in the near future kaya?
Yes, of course. Yes, I will get a sample so that I can share this.
Sige, thank you for that, Doc Aisha. Oo, yes, Carlo?
Yung sa Dr. Alicia misspelling, may tinanong ako sa chat box doon, yung sa mga sundalo kaya in-observe niyo rin yung sa EMF. Kasi alam ko marami din diyan sa na may wifi din sa mga kampo diyan.
Wala
Doktor?
po. Wala po kami na-observe sa sundalo po.
Oo, kasi sa kampo Then marami rin tiyak na napapunahan diyan Kaya sana po in the future ma-observean niyo rin po. At least may guide din kami.
Meron kaming na-test, na-check na sundalo pero hindi sa Pilipinas. Sundalo sa Amerika, yung veteran. Ang edad niya ay less than 40 or nasa 40. Tapos marami na siyang mga sakit. Tapos na-check namin yung dugo niya. Marami siya yung nakita natin sa bakuna. Kasi tama ka, maraming bakuna binibigay sa mga sundalo. At sinabi niya, at one time, 5 vaccines at a time, a handful of tablets, and they just line up and take it.
Hopefully soon may mga sundalo din na sana mag-test ninyo dahil alam naman natin ang gulo ngayon sa ating bansa at sa buong mundo kaya sana po magkaroon ng observation din dito para may share din naman sa amin anong pwede nangyari sa mga sundalo.
Kung may sundalo kang kilala, papuntahin mo siya sa clinic namin, i-test namin siya dito sa Dumaguete.
Yep. I will tell somebody then the si Captain or si General Fortis for sure.
Oh, kung
Sige
willing sila Carlo, please connect them with us para pwedeng ma-testing.
Yeah po. Salamat po. I will leave the phone na.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Oo, salamat. Thank you. Okay, sige. So are there any other questions or concerns po? Super Sally said this vaccine has been added to the pediatric schedule this year. Oh no.
Yes, maybe I can comment on that. So the Philippines is the only country in the world that has added rabies vaccines to a pediatric schedule. So it's recommended, I think, for babies. I have to check the age, but it's recommended, I think, from 2 years of age, 2 doses, and 4 weeks apart. So this is what they call PrEP, it's pre-exposure prophylaxis. This is not done anywhere else in the world. But parents need to know that even if they get this rabies vaccine for their child, if their child is bitten by an animal that potentially has rabies, they still need to get the regular rabies vaccines. So this doesn't prevent anything. And it may be detrimental because, for one, if it's given to millions of children, even if adverse events are rare, there will be some children who have adverse events. And we don't know how the vaccine interacts with other vaccines. And for parents whose child has had this vaccine, they may not realize that their child still needs a rabies vaccine if they are bitten by a dog or cat that has rabies. And then the child may not get the care that they need in case they were at risk. So when I look at this, I would just like to tell parents that just because a vaccine is on the schedule doesn't mean you need to accept it. You should assess everything that is being offered to you and decide what is relevant for you. Most children who grew up in our cities or towns do not have any need for a rabies vaccine because their risk of exposure is extremely low. So just make your own decision on what is relevant for your child or yourself. You can say yes to some or none, or you can say yes to all. It's your decision, but you don't have to just take it because it's offered.
And you have every right to ask what's in the vaccines and what the effects will be.
And what your real risks are. Because for every vaccine, you should consider a risk benefit. And if your child is living in a condominium, their risk of ever coming in contact with rabies is negligible. For most children, it's actually negligible. The Philippines has very good vaccination program for animals, particularly stray animals, which is quite effective in controlling rabies. And that they do have available treatment in case somebody really needs it, if they get bitten by a dog. So yes, please consider that one. Philippines is the only country in the world to do this. So we need to ask why.
Yes, indeed. All right. Okay, so meron pa po ba tayong tanong? It's already 4 o'clock. We promised that the meeting will be until 4 o'clock lang. So baka for those of you who still have questions. Oh, mukhang people are quiet. So baka wala na pong tanong. A lot of food for thought. Yes, Teacher Romy. Sige, please unmute po.
Ito po at Attorney Tanya, pwede pong mag-request na makakuha ng soft copy doon sa pinipresent ng Doktora Asia at sa Ma'am Penny. Dahil parang hanggang ngayon tumataas yung mga balahibo ko tungkol doon. Tapos para na rin proof yun kapag halimbawa meron kaming kausap ng mga parents na i-encourage na mag-receive ng aming i-offer na mga letter na template tapos para maipadala nila doon sa teacher. Dahil yun ay talagang nagka-count doon sa mga explanation na ibibigay namin. Talagang merong epekto yung mga naibigay o na-receive na bakuna doon sa mga kabataan nila, lalong-lalo na kapag babad sa Wi-Fi. Pwede ba tayo tingin?
Yes, what we can do, I think yung pinaka-authoritative talaga na presentation is the one we did for the international community nung May. So we will send you the link. It's on the YouTube channel of Lunas Pilipinas. And then meron din pong ginawang reports po sila Super Sally, Doc Aisha, and Miss Penny na in writing, we actually plan to submit it to government sometime soon. Pwede din namin kayo bigyan ng kopya. So for example, if you're in touch with people from DOST or DOH, pwede po niyong ibigay sa kanila yung technical paper na ito. So makita po nila na hindi lang po tayo mga, na scientific po ang pagkakagawa dito. Hindi lang ito amateur effort ba?
Maganda po yan. Lastly, pwede bang manghingi ng suggestion sa mga kasamahan dito? Dahil noong kasagsagan ng COVID vaccine, talagang laging pinamukha ng supervisor, ng mga principal at yung mga co-teachers namin na talagang mga rebelde, mga ganito-ganyan kami dito. Tapos ayan na naman, meron na namang another bakunahan sa mga kabataan. Tapos kapag mamimigay na naman kami ng mga letter para i-receive ng parents at maintindihan di dapat sila pa-deceive dyan sa mga bakunang yan, meron na namang mga sasabihin silang ganito, ganyan. So ano kaya ang mga suggestion, no? Meron ba tayong mga kumbaga letter or something na mahawakan na talagang pagkakatulong sa aming mga fighters dito sa baba? Freedom fighters.
We're Super Sally, baka you have ideas about this because we've been at it since 2021.
Ganyan talaga lagi ang sinabi nila.
Oo, there's a lot of material. Kung baga, nung time na yon, di ba, konti lang yung material, hirap na hirap tayo. Ngayon, there's so much information all over eh. Di ba? So, Super Sally, any thoughts on what we can do to empower our freedom fighters on the ground?
I think we have to build community because there's strength in numbers. The more of us that are on the same page, the easier it is to speak out. And I think we really have to work with grassroots education of parents and students for their rights and responsibilities. I mean, it's a responsibility to know what you're being offered. It's a responsibility to know what your children are being given. And it's your right then to say if you will do or don't want. So grassroots education, community building, and empowerment. And then, remember that our elected officials are elected officials. They are responsible to the community. And I think the community should hold their elected officials to account because they are public services. And that's easy to say. It's easy to say and hard to do, but I think it's very important that we don't forget that.
Ganito na lang, Attorney Lat, pwedeng mag-suggest?
Sige, go ahead po.
Pwede bang makagawa tayo ng kahit maikling brochure man lang tungkol sa lahat-lahat ng mga example, yung mga importanteng data from Super Sally, tapos yung mga findings ni Dr. Ayesha at ni Ma'am Penerias, tapos i-connect natin doon sa hindi kailangang tanggapin kung ano-ano yung mga ino-offer nilang libreng bakuna. Mag-ingat, ganito, ganyan. Para ganun lang. Tapos, nandun yung Lunas Pilipinas Coalition and the rest of the groups na nagtutulungan. Para ibibigay doon sa parents kasama noon sa template or letter para isubmit sa teacher.
Okay. Sige, we will seriously consider that suggestion. Actually, we're already thinking of materials to prepare. Sige po, let's continue to talk about what you think would be helpful and then yung team po will prepare. Tapos i-disseminate po namin sa inyo dyan.
Thank you, Super Sally.
Oo, thank you. And definitely, we just want to give a big shout out po sa inyo dyan sa Bohol. Yung sinasabi ni Super Sally that there is strength in numbers. It's a big thing po na kayo po ay nagsanib puwersa na po and you're now Lunas Pilipinas Bohol. So that's how we become stronger. That's how we can support each other. Na kayo po na nasa respective regions po ninyo, you band together with mga like-minded patriots at tulong-tulong po tayo nationwide. And yung kagandahan po nito is that our Philippine coalition is also in touch now with the international coalitions. So we're with World Council for Health, si Doc Marivic Villa is there. Tapos we are also in touch with people from Asia, New Zealand, South Africa, the US, Latin America. So lumalakas po tayo, huwag po tayong matakot, marami po tayo.
May supervisor po tayo ng DepEd nandito ngayon. Salamat po Ma'am Joy Duyak. Andito siya, tapos marami kaming taga-Bohol na andito. Ngunit meron pa rin hindi nakapasok dahil nag-burn out, halos nag-blackout, laging nagganyan dito sa Bohol.
Oh no.
Andito si Ma'am Joy Duyak, isang supervisor din dito sa Bohol. Merong principal at maraming teachers.
Ay, maraming salamat po. Malaki po yung role po ng mga supervisors and superintendent, principals po. Salamat po sa inyong pagmamahal sa ating bansa at sa ating mga anak.
Salamat po, sir.
Ayan, si Ma'am Doyak. Thank you, Ma'am Joy.
Hi, Ma'am Joy.
Ma'am Joy, thank you for joining us po.
nag-iisang supervisor ng ball sa DepEd na hindi talaga nagpaturok.
Mabuhay po kayo. Saludo po.
Saludo kami sa iyo, Ma'am Joy.
Salamat po. O yun, okay. So with that, it's already 4:10. Meron pa po bang ibang questions? Baka may mga kailangan pa magsimba o may mga kailangan magpakain ng mga baka o mga mga inaalagang hayop.
Ako yan, Tanya.
I know.
Mukhang magpapaalam na ako yung mga hayop ko tumatawag na, gutom na.
Ayun po. So, siguro as by way of closing, if we can invite the people who are in the Zoom room, kung okay lang po sa inyong mag video on po, so that we can just have a picture taking. This is something that we're not able to do for most of our broadcasts. We are a small enough group na pwede po tayo mag-picture taking. And salamat po sa inyong pagdalo. It's always nice po. We have formed a community in all of the years that we have been broadcasting and joining each other on Zoom. And hopefully po we get to meet each other in person sometime soon. But we thank you for joining us virtually. And thank you, Doc Aisha. Thank you, Super Sally and Miss Penny, for your presentations. Thank you, Teacher Romy, for organizing this and for bringing in all our teachers. At salamat po sa lahat ng dumalo ngayong hapon.
So, paki-open na po ng cam para mag-picture daw. Screenshot.
Picture po. May kasama po ako sa trabaho, sinasabi niya kapag hindi nag-picture, hindi nangyari. Diba? So, proof po na nandito po tayo. Ayun. So, siguro Miss Sheila and Jade and Lapanganod, baka pwede po magbukas ng video. Ayun po. I will take the picture. Sige po. So, on the count of 3 po, kung hindi po kayo naka-on, pangalan lang po nakalagay. O, sige po, smile. Sige, 1, 2, 3. Sige, isa pa po. Wacky. Sige po. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Salamat.
And
Thank
have a blessed
you.
week po. Take care and God bless you.